Greetings everybody, this is Charles the Historian, and behind me you can see Raymond James Stadium, home of the Buccaneers, and Super Bowl 55, which will be here in a few weeks. So I figured that since we're coming up on this and I'm kind of kicking off my channel to become something bigger than it was, I might as well start with a little bit of history of football. So this is the last video in the series, and you know, if you haven't seen the other ones, just stop right now and check them out. I'll put the link in the description below for all the other videos, so you can kind of see them in order and get caught up. But if you just wanted to watch this one on the 1905 season, then let's go. All right, so there's a lot of football history, and I can make like an entire channel about it, but I'm just going to stop with this one because it's going to bring us to the final formation of what will become football. So where we left off last was with Walter Camp and his tremendous contributions, and it's actually more than that. He practically invented the football as we know it. So when Walter Camp left off, we have lines of scrimmage, you've got player positions, halfbacks, fullbacks, quarterbacks, center snapping the ball. You've got stoppage of play between downs. You've got down and distance situations. A lot of stuff in there, and we're kind of, entering into normal football, and blocking was being introduced. But a crucial few things were not yet in place, and we'll soon get to them, and they're kind of important to this video. So when he left Stanford in 1895, the game was getting really violent. It was about smashing and grinding your way down the field, much less than today's, beautiful long runs and deep passes and anything. And you only needed to go 5 yards, and everything was tight on the line. All the people were kind of, brought in close together, and and so the flying V wedge formation, which they saw in like the first game, was kind of very popular. So think of just imagine football, instead of all the formations we have today, imagine it being nothing but goal line the whole way down the field. And nobody spread off, and it's just goal line push, goal line push, goal line push, goal line push. That's what it was. And you're hoping that your backs can get out and around and they can break free and then burst down the side of the field. The emphasis was on a close stampede type offense, which led to many people being killed and being trampled. So you could imagine just like a huge crowd of people just hitting and smashing and trampling each other. Players on offense were allowed to block at that time, and they would lock arms, and this led to many serious injuries, obviously. And now this is outlawed, and that's why you're able to see defensive lines, twists and stunts and stuff like that. Helmets and face masks would not be standard for more than half a century. So we're not really getting what we think of as with NFL pads and stuff today, but this is kind of the basis for all of that. It's that violent. Some major innovations and actions were occurring as well. In 1885, the first game held on a campus happened when Princeton went to New Haven to play Yale at their place, and they won on a Sports Center worthy punt return for a touchdown, which was so exciting that it was replayed and talked about for a while, and it kind of helped grow the popularity of the game. As we got back in the 1890s, the game expanded across the U.S., and some of the blue blood programs that we know today started really their rivalries. So we get the Army-Navy game from this day. You start seeing, Georgia Tech and other stuff like that. It should be noted that this is when you start seeing some fight songs and cheers and the people that led them, although the first cheerleaders were men. They did not wear skirts. They're not like the cheerleaders in the NFL that you see now. The oldest known fight song comes from 1885 at Boston College, and the first game way back in 1869 actually had the first cheer for Princeton. It was hurrah, 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 Tiger Sist Boom Ah, right? So Sist Boom Bah is kind of like a jokey cheer that we use today, but that's where that kind of began. It had the first cheers. And the first college marching band was credited to Notre Dame way back before the Civil War in the 1840s. But they were playing in games as early as 1887. However, their epic fight song wouldn't be created until the very year we're discussing in this video, 1905, and it wouldn't be debuted until 1906. So now we're starting to get that atmosphere that makes college football unique. Now I know we're at the Super Bowl and that's professional, but college was the first and foremost for a long time. Professional football would be secondary for decades, really until that kind of Super Bowl. But for right now, though, we're going to focus on college and its violence, because it's from this bloody carnage that our modern complete game would arise and conquer the nation. So around 1897, we'll just pick this year because it's notable, there was a lot of rivalry games canceled because so many players had been crippled or killed. The Army-Navy series, the Harvard-Yale series. A player from Georgia Bulldogs named Richard Von Albati Gammon if I'm saying his name correctly, was killed playing Virginia, causing UGA, Georgia Tech, and Mercer to cancel their seasons. So here's what happened. He dove into a pile to make a tackle, and when the pile was cleared, he was lying there motionless. They kind of managed to get him aroused a bit, and some doctors came down and said, this guy is like knocked out, he's in very bad shape. And as he was being taken off the field, one of his teammates looked at him and said, you ain't gonna give up, are you? And he looked at him, and his reported last words were, no, Bill, I've got too much Georgia grit for that.
It just means more.
You know, I'm taking that with a huge block of salt, but it's a great story. But the whole point is that you can see how bad it was. The Georgia legislature was in session at the time, and they took this death very, very seriously. They passed a bill to ban the game of football in the state of Georgia. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine Georgia banning football? I think I just heard a million styrofoam cups full of boiled peanuts hit the floor right now. Well, before the governor could actually sign the bill into law, the boy's mother, who was still grieving, wrote him a letter and said that although she was devastated, she didn't want to see the sport banned. Plenty of people got killed skating or rock climbing. Ending the game's not going to bring her son back. And it was super popular, and her son would have never wanted to have his death end the game that he loved. And that persuaded the governor, and so football was saved in the Peach State. And there's a little plaque to her and stuff at UGA and about how she's basically saved football in Georgia, and maybe even for the rest of the country, because if Georgia would have banned it, it probably would have gotten, domino affected the rest of the country. Although, if they knew what was going to happen to the Falcons in Super Bowl 51, they might have wanted to let the ban go through. So this is just one story, but there were dozens more like this all over and at all levels. Football was very, very, very violent and dangerous. Rugby fans love to talk trash to us Americans about how much pansies are because they wear pads and things. But just imagine if you had 19 players die in one season. That's what happened. That's what happened in 1905. You would think that you would try to find some way to keeping these players, safe so you can keep the sport and people aren't dying. That's right. You heard me. 1905, 19 players across the country died playing football. So much so that people were trying to get it banned. Teddy Roosevelt, legend has it, even threatened to have it banned if they didn't do something about it. Now, Teddy Roosevelt, he loved a good fight, and he loved being manly and athletic and all, but kids dying for a game was something he was not down with. There's a lot of speculation whether or not this was actually true, whether he actually threatened this. His sons played football at the college level. He loved all things that are sports and competitive and outdoors and manliness. Think about it, football is such a Teddy Roosevelt sport, right? It's brash, it's pomp, it's competitive, and he also didn't even have the real authority to ban football anyway. As president, he could use his influence, though, if he wanted to, but he really didn't want to. But what he did do was he called a meeting of the Ivy League powerhouses, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and he had them come to the White House on November 9th, 1905. Our buddy Walter Camp made his way to the White House, where he was among 6 others who discussed what could be done to help save football. As this was happening, other people were brainstorming ways to save it. Some people favored reducing the number of downs or expanding the field or doing something. But a month after this meeting, 62 teams met in New York and agreed to start an intercollegiate athletic association, which would later change its name to the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, 4 years later. And it was decided then that a drastic new rule would be implemented, which would forever transform football into the game that we know today, right? Which would be the forward pass. This would separate it forever from rugby and from like Aussie rules football or any other derivatives of rugby. The ability to throw the ball forward would revolutionize the game, although not immediately. It's not like they went out and were already running like post routes and stuff. It wasn't until 1913 that Knute Rockne of Notre Dame really found its advantages and would transform the game into the product that we see today. A pass-heavy game led by legendary quarterback heroes like Joe Montana and Tom Brady wouldn't be seen for quite a while, right? And the reason this was initially implemented wasn't to see the awesome Hail Marys and plays and things, but because they thought that allowing players to run past the line of scrimmage would open up the field and there would be less of a mob in the middle getting people's necks snapped. They didn't foresee that people were going to get wrecked by John Lynch over the middle, but he never killed anybody. He just knocked out his own brother-in-law once in a game before Thanksgiving. Over the years, there would be tweaks to all the rules, and the game would turn into a skills competition that it is today. A few days ago, actually, Tom Brady was asked what changes that he noticed over his 2 decades in the NFL, and he was kind of wishy-washy about it, but he did say that the current game is more skills-based and less power-based with running and stuff, and the rules kind of favor more of that kind of, physical, be faster, get people in the right spots, learn to predict and read more than just, hey, I'm stronger and faster than you, let me bowl you over. But with each decade, some development would happen with some rules or some tactics or things that would kind of advance it to where we have. Like, you need receivers to be able to be wide away from the chaos, right? The wide outs of the snap, so that they could use their speed and agility. So new positions are created. So now you needed, to counter that, you need a defense that's fast and agile, that has men that are able to guard those receivers. So you get defensive backs. And this leads to great duels like Richard Sherman when he called out Michael Crabtree, right? Or Deion Sanders versus Jerry Rice. None of this would have existed without the events of 1905. So, as we prepare for another Super Bowl and the long off season that begins when the Lombardi Trophy is handled out, we should take some time and think about and enjoy the journey of our favorite sport, taken out of the fields of English schoolboys in the early 1800s to the billion-dollar event that it is today that you see behind me here. I mean, if you were to take that William, Webb Ellis kid and tell him, what you're going to do turns into this, I'm sure he'd be confounded, how did this happen? It's come a long way from basically war soccer. It's now a chess match with athletic feats. It's a game for brains and for brawn. It's a metaphor for life. It's war. It's community, right? It's the whole town shutting down for football. It's the ultimate team game. You need to have all the parts working or it doesn't work. You can have a great quarterback, but with no line, he's done. It's everything you want it to be. If those guys from Rutgers and Princeton were able to watch the game that will take place in this stadium next week, they would be confused as to how their game turned out, but I'm confident they would be entertained and impressed. So thank you for watching The Birth of Football. If you haven't seen the other videos, please look at the description for the links to the other videos, and I have different subjects. As a historian, I don't focus on one particular subject, so don't expect a ton of football videos. I'm going to try to do some sports history and things like that, but I do all kinds of history. I'm fascinated by everything, and I know a lot of stuff, so I'm trying to bring all of that to you. I spent years and years and years just compiling all of this knowledge in my head, and just one day it was time to get it out for the rest of the people so that everybody else can kind of know these things and to entertain. So thanks for watching again. Please subscribe, share with your friends if you like this kind of stuff. It'll help me out. I'd love to be able to do this as a full-time job and bring you some really good stuff in the future. So again, thank you.